The cold wind howled through the nearly empty street as snowflakes fell gently onto the dimly lit bus stop, covering everything in a soft white silence. It was the kind of night most people rushed home to escape, but she had nowhere to go. Curled up tightly on the wooden bench, the little girl hugged herself, her thin dress no match for the freezing temperature. Her name was Aisha, only 7 years old, and her small body trembled even in sleep. People passed by, some slowing down for a moment, their eyes filled with brief curiosity or pity, but no one stopped. In a world rushing forward, no one had time to look back. But that night, one man did. A black car slowed down near the bus stop, its headlights cutting through the snowfall. Inside sat a man who was used to power, wealth, and control, a CEO whose name commanded respect in boardrooms and headlines alike. Yet something about the tiny figure on the bench made him pause. He stepped out of the car, his polished shoes crunching against the snow as he approached cautiously. For a moment, he simply stood there, observing her fragile form, wondering how someone so small had ended up so alone in such a harsh night. Then, gently, he reached out and placed his hand near her shoulder, careful not to startle her. "Hey, wake up," he whispered softly. The girl stirred, her eyes fluttering open with confusion and fear. She quickly sat up, pulling back as if expecting danger. "It's okay," he said, his voice calm and reassuring, unlike the commanding tone he used in his daily life. "You shouldn't be here, it's too cold." She looked at him silently, her eyes filled with both suspicion and exhaustion. "Come with me," he said after a brief pause, his voice carrying an unexpected warmth. Those 3 words could have meant anything, but something in his tone felt different, safe, genuine. She hesitated, her tiny fingers gripping the edge of the bench, unsure whether to trust a stranger in a world that had already failed her. Yet, deep down, she felt she had no other choice. Slowly, she nodded. That simple moment marked the beginning of a story neither of them could have imagined. The warmth of the car wrapped around her like a blanket as they drove through the quiet city streets. She didn't say much, only glancing at him occasionally, as if trying to understand why he had stopped for her when everyone else had walked away. He, on the other hand, found himself unusually quiet, his thoughts racing. He had built an empire from nothing, fought battles that hardened his heart, and learned to trust no one. But tonight, something had shifted. When they arrived at his luxurious home, the contrast was overwhelming, grand gates, bright lights, and a house that looked like it belonged in a dream. She stepped inside hesitantly, her small feet leaving faint wet marks on the polished floor. He called for the house staff, instructing them to bring warm clothes and food. As she sat at the dining table, staring at the plate in front of her, she hesitated again. "You can eat," he said gently. That was all she needed. Within seconds, she began eating as if she hadn't had a proper meal in days. Watching her, something inside him tightened, a mix of guilt, anger, and determination. That night, for the first time in years, the powerful CEO couldn't sleep. He sat in his study, staring at the city lights outside his window, thinking about the life he had built and the life he had ignored. Meanwhile, Aisha slept peacefully in a warm bed, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. The next morning arrived quietly, but everything felt different. Sunlight streamed through the large windows as Aisha slowly woke up, her eyes adjusting to the unfamiliar surroundings. For a moment, she panicked, unsure where she was, but then memories of the night returned. She stepped out of the room, following the smell of breakfast. In the dining area, he was already seated, reading something on his tablet, but when he noticed her, he put it aside immediately. "Good morning," he said, a slight smile appearing on his face, something rare for a man like him. She didn't respond right away, still unsure of how to act. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. She nodded slowly, then looked at the food on the table. "Come, sit," he said. As she began eating, he watched her again, but this time with a different expression, one filled with responsibility. After a few minutes, he finally asked the question that had been on his mind since last night. "Where are your parents?" The question hung in the air. She paused, her small hands gripping the spoon tightly. "I don't have anyone," she whispered. Those words hit him harder than any business loss ever could. In that moment, something changed inside him completely. He wasn't just a man who had helped a stranger anymore, he had become someone's only hope. That day, instead of going to his office, he made calls, not to investors or partners, but to schools, child services, and people who could help give her a proper life. But more importantly, he made a decision that surprised even himself. He wasn't going to send her away. He wanted to be there for her, to ensure she never had to sleep on a cold bench again. As the day went on, Aisha slowly began to open up, her quiet nature giving way to small smiles and curious glances. She explored the house, touching things with wonder, as if stepping into a world she had only imagined. For him, every moment felt like a reminder of what truly mattered. Success, wealth, power, they all felt meaningless compared to the simple act of giving someone a chance at life. By evening, as the sun began to set, he found himself sitting in the living room, watching her laugh softly at something on television. It was a sound that filled the empty spaces of his home in a way nothing else ever had. He realized that sometimes, the biggest changes in life come from the smallest decisions, like stopping a car on a snowy night or whispering 3 simple words. But the story didn't end there. In fact, it was only just beginning. Because the real question wasn't what he did that night, it was what happened the next day, and how that one act of kindness would ripple into something far greater than either of them could have imagined. If this story touched your heart and made you believe in the power of kindness, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, the smallest stories carry the biggest lessons, and you won't want to miss what happens next.